street. It's part of the Democrat Party's get out the vote thing and stoking the flames beneath their race-based coalition in order to get their racist coalition together for Election Day. Well, it turns out, this is another news media story. This isn't so much about Keith Lamont Scott, although it is about him. It's about the news media, because there are a couple of crazy little facts that have emerged about Keith Lamont Scott, who was shot by the police. The police said all along that he had a pistol. They gave us photographs of the pistol. He said his DNA is on the pistol. His fingerprints are on the pistol. The pistol was photographed at the scene by bystanders. He had an ankle holster on. And much of that appears to be in the video, but some of it is not as clear as we'd like because it wasn't directed by Oliver Stone or anything. It was a funny video camera on a dashboard and strapped to somebody's chest when they're moving around in a situation where there's a gunfight of sorts going on. One-sided gunfight, but nonetheless. Turns out that Keith Lamont Scott, the latest hero of the left, like Trayvon Martin and Freddie Gray, the heroin dealer, and Michael Brown, the strong-armed thug who was so stoned that he might have been hallucinating, according to the Washington Post and their assessment of his THC content in his blood. But never mind all that. The heroes of the left, Mumia Abu-Jamal and William Ayers and Mao Zedong and Che Guevara and the Castro brothers, the heroes of the left, you know who I'm talking about. Terrorists, murderers, killers, criminals, the heroes of the left. Are there any heroes that they have that aren't killers, criminals, mass murderers? They wear Chairman Mao T-shirts. He's the #1 mass murderer in history. Che Guevara, they wear T-shirts, have posters, they wear his beret, they think he's neat, they smell like him a lot of the time, and he's a mass murderer and a racist and a communist, and they love him. They revere him. He's neat. They think he's neat. And now comes Keith Lamont Scott as the latest hero, who was shot by a police officer who's African-American as well. And the news media has an interesting tendency when reporting on the story about Keith Lamont Scott. Interesting tendency to fail to mention that the police officer that shot him is African-American. They just leave that out of story after story after story because it doesn't fit the narrative, you know, and our crooked, lousy, tabloid, stinking media doesn't think that that is a fact that is fit to print, which is why most of us don't believe anything that they say anymore in the news media. Well, it turns out that a couple of things. The family, remember the wife came running out and she's videotaping. And okay, I guess people do that. She's rolling video on her phone, running out. It's not videotape, technically. And yelling, "Don't shoot him, don't shoot." Why would she be yelling, "Don't shoot him"? Okay, she's yelling because he's black. And well, but the police officer that shot him is black. And she's yelling, "He doesn't have a gun." Why is she yelling, "He doesn't have a gun"? That's kind of weird. Weird thing to yell that he doesn't have a gun. Well, he did have a gun, and she said, no, the family says, oh, no, he was reading a book. Well, the police chief, who's also black, says that there was no book recovered at the scene. Turns out, however, that his mother says, Keith Scott's mother, said that he was fond of reading the Koran every day. He liked to read the Koran every day. Now, where might he have picked up the habit of reading the Koran every day? Difficult to say for sure, but he did do 6 years in a penitentiary, which I was unaware of until yesterday, for shooting somebody in Texas with a gun, a 9mm pistol, a handgun. Also, his wife, his adoring wife, who came running out yelling stuff while rolling video on the phone, had filed restraining orders against him twice. Once because he had attacked her and stabbed her in the back repeatedly, nearly puncturing a lung or lungs, and on and on. And then years later, that was years ago, and then years later, another restraining order because he had been beating their 8-year-old child, threatening the child's mother, the wife, with a gun, another restraining order. And she warned the police at the time that he carried a 9mm pistol. This is after he had done time in prison for shooting somebody, which makes it illegal for him to own a firearm, much less be carrying a firearm. So this is a bunch of stuff that our friends in the fake news media have decided to omit. They've sanitized it for somebody's protection. I'm not sure whose. Charlotte, North Carolina, CBS News is the is the purveyor of this bit of journalism. It's mostly the Associated Press, but it's on the CBS website. Keith Lamont Scott's wife filed restraining orders, plural, against him. The black man killed by Charlotte police officer. He's black, but the police officer is not, even though the police officer is. Now, why is he a black man? Well, because that's the issue, isn't it? That's the whole thing. By the way, I've got a long list of white people that have been killed by the police since Keith Lamont Scott was killed by the police that the news media doesn't seem to have any interest in covering for some peculiar reason. Had a restraining order filed against him a year ago when he threatened to kill his wife and her son with a gun, which he's not allowed to have because of his criminal record. According to court documents obtained Tuesday, Keith Scott's wife filed the restraining order on October 5th, saying that law enforcement officers who encounter him should be aware that, quote, he carries a 9mm black gun, as opposed to a yellow one or a pink tiger stripe one, which you can get. Police have said Scott had a handgun when they approached him at an apartment complex last week. Yeah, there was one recovered at the scene and photographed by bystanders and all that good stuff, too. Officers told Scott repeatedly to drop the weapon, and he was shot to death when he didn't follow their orders. Scott's family has said that he was not armed. How they would know that, nobody knows, but that's a stupid thing to say. He obviously was. Videos released, police, family, blah, blah, blah. The package removed Tuesday night was taken to a remote location, rendered safe. There was something they thought was perhaps an explosive device. And she said in the restraining order last fall, the wife, Rakia Scott, sought to keep her husband away because, quote, he hit my 8-year-old in the head a total of 3 times with his fist. And, quote, she said in the restraining order document, he kicked me, threatened to kill us last night with his gun. She said in the order filed in Gaston County, where the couple had lived. He said he's a killer, and we should know that. Now, this is the same woman that's coming out. And by the way, the other family members have come out and expressed their devout racism for white people and for Asians. Say, against white people, it's okay. Go home, make soup for Ling Ling. Yeah, go home, make soup for Ling Ling, to an Asian police officer that was walking by. And just a thing or two to know about this story that our friends in the fake news media think we need to be shielded from for whatever reason. She later dismissed the restraining order, but there were 2 different restraining orders, one in 2004 and one last year. And according to court documents, Raika Scott said, Keith Scott, quote, assaulted me several times by stabbing me in the back, almost puncturing my lungs. He sliced my ear and bruised my body. All right, so here's the latest hero of the Democrat Party, the poor innocent victim of racist police. I just thought you should get a little update on that because it's not going to be on This Week with a Clinton administration official. Provide a little context to the situation that police officers deal with on a daily basis. And then the news media lies and conceals and deceives and deflects. The most insidious power the news media has is the power to ignore. And when they ignore all of this information, we are being lied to by professional liars with an agenda who can't be trusted. After this long period of time, we should know that. Next up...